The Dominion had ruled the Orion sector for 3,000 years. Their empire stretched across 200 star systems. They had crushed 17 different alien civilizations. They had taken their worlds, stolen their resources, and erased their cultures from history. No species had ever successfully fought back against them. No species had ever made them afraid. When their scout ships found the small human research station on the frozen moon of 442b, they saw nothing special. The station was called Horizon. It was a simple structure made of metal and glass, sitting on a world of ice and rock. Inside lived only 847 people. Most of them were scientists studying the moon's strange atmosphere. Some were miners extracting rare minerals from the frozen ground. Others were their families, wives, husbands, and children who had followed their loved ones to the edge of known space. Fleet Commander looked at the images of Station Horizon and laughed. His massive body shook with amusement. There were tall creatures, nearly 3 meters high, with thick gray skin and 4 arms. They had evolved as predators on a harsh world, and they had never lost their hunger for conquest. "These humans," said to his officers, "they spread like insects. They build their little nests everywhere, but they are weak. They have no great warships. They have no weapons that can threaten us. They are nothing." His second-in-command, a younger named, agreed. "Should we simply destroy them, Commander?" Shook his head. "No, we will give them a choice. We will show them the proper way to deal with the Dominion. They can surrender and give us everything they have, or they can die. Either way, the other humans will learn their place." The transmission reached Station Horizon at 3:47 in the morning, local time. Station Commander Park was asleep in her small quarters when the alarm woke her. She was a woman of 58 years, with gray streaks in her black hair and deep lines around her eyes. She had served in Earth's Navy for 30 years before retiring to lead this research station. She had thought her fighting days were over. She was wrong. Read the message 3 times. They were giving humanity 12 hours to evacuate the station and surrender all research data. If the humans refused, they would destroy them. There would be no negotiation. There would be no mercy. Called her senior staff to the command center. The room was cold and dimly lit, filled with the soft hum of computers. Chief Engineer arrived first. He was a quiet man with clever hands and a sharp mind. He had built half the systems that kept the station running. "How long do we need to evacuate everyone safely?" asked him. Ran the calculations on his computer. His face grew pale. 19 hours, Commander. The transport ships need time to warm up their engines. If we rush, we risk killing everyone aboard." "And they gave us 12 hours, said quietly. "They know," replied. "They know we cannot escape in time. This is not a real choice. This is just cruelty." Dr. Lee entered next. She was the head of research, a brilliant woman who had spent 5 years studying how to make dead worlds come alive. She carried a data pad in her shaking hands. "All our work," she whispered. "Everything we have learned about terraforming, they want it. If they get this technology, they could reshape entire planets. They could become even more powerful." Security Chief was the last to arrive. He was a large man with a face and hands that had seen many fights. He carried his sidearm, already loaded. "How many soldiers do we have?" asked him. Shook his head. 42 security personnel. We have 4 defensive turrets. They have 300 warships in orbit. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. There was no way to win. There was no way to escape. The only question was how they would spend their final hours. Stood up straight. Her voice was calm and steady when she spoke. "We cannot fight them. We cannot run from them, but we can make sure the galaxy knows what happened here. We will broadcast everything, every moment, every image, every word back to Earth. They want to send a message to humanity. We will send our own message instead." She looked at each of her officers in turn. "They will know our names. They will know we were not soldiers. They will know we were scientists and families and dreamers who came to this frozen moon to build something beautiful, and they will know that they murdered us without mercy. Nodded slowly. I can boost our signal. Earth will receive the transmission in real time. Do it, ordered. The next 12 hours passed like a dream. Parents held their children close. Friends said goodbye to friends. Some people prayed. Others wrote letters that would never be delivered. The station's small chapel was full for the first time in years. At 15:47 hours, exactly on schedule, the Armada descended from the darkness of space. 300 warships, each one larger than Station Horizon itself, surrounded the tiny moon. Their weapons glowed with terrible energy. Commander sent one final message. Humans, your time has ended. Surrender now or be destroyed. Sat in her command chair. The broadcast was running. Billions of people on Earth were watching. She took a deep breath and began to speak. This is Station Horizon. We are 847 human beings. We did not come here for war. We came to build, to learn, to grow. We came because we believed the universe was big enough for everyone. She began to read the names. Every single person on the station. Scientists, engineers, miners, teachers, children. She spoke each name clearly like a prayer. The battle lasted 11 minutes. Plasma cannons tore through the station's thin walls. Explosions ripped through corridors where families had lived and laughed. The defensive turrets fired back bravely but uselessly against the overwhelming enemy. When it was over, Station Horizon was nothing but burning metal and frozen bodies floating in the void. But the broadcast had reached Earth. And Earth would remember. The footage arrived on Earth like a bomb. It spread across every news channel, every social media platform, every screen in every home. People stopped what they were doing and watched. They watched the warships surround the tiny station. They watched Commander Park read the names of her people. They watched the explosions tear through metal and glass. They watched 847 innocent people die. In the United Nations Assembly Hall, the world's leaders sat in complete silence. The giant screen showed the final moments of Station Horizon over and over again. Some delegates were crying. Others sat with their fists clenched so tight their knuckles turned white. The room was filled with grief and something else, something darker and more dangerous. Rage. Fleet Admiral stood at the podium. He was a tall man in his 60s, with a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. He had served in Earth's military for 40 years. He had seen death. He had ordered men into battles they could not win, but he had never felt anger like this before. 3 days ago, he began, his voice low and controlled, the Dominion murdered 847 of our people. They were not soldiers. They were not threats. They were scientists trying to understand the universe. They were families who wanted to build a better future. They were children who had done nothing wrong except be born human. He paused and let the silence fill the room. They expect us to negotiate. Every species they have ever encountered has tried to negotiate. They beg for mercy. They offer tribute. They give up their dignity to survive. Placed both hands on the podium and leaned forward. I am not here to negotiate. I am here to ask this council for permission to remind the galaxy why humanity stopped fighting each other 200 years ago. A delegate from Europe raised his hand. Admiral, they have 3,000 warships. Their technology is more advanced than ours. How can we possibly? We stopped fighting each other, interrupted, not because we found peace. We stopped because we became too good at war. We developed weapons that could end worlds. We created strategies that could break empires. We learned how to turn our greatest weakness, our small numbers, into our greatest strength. He pressed a button on the podium. Images appeared on the screen behind him. Massive shipyards that had been closed for a century. Weapons systems that existed only in classified files. Training programs that had been frozen since the last great human conflict. To think we are weak because we chose not to fight. They are wrong. We chose not to fight because we knew what we were capable of. Now they have given us a reason to remember. The vote took less than an hour. Every nation on Earth, without exception, voted yes. Within 3 days, the sleeping giant of human military power began to wake up. Shipyards that had been museums were cleared out and filled with workers. Engineers who had spent their careers building peaceful technology now turned their skills to destruction. Scientists who had studied the stars began calculating how to burn them. The first new warship rolled off the production line in just 2 weeks. It was called the Remembrance. More followed, dozens, then hundreds. They were not as large as ships. They were not as flashy or impressive, but they were fast, silent, and deadly. Admiral personally oversaw the selection of crew members. He wanted the best, not just the strongest but those who understood what they were fighting for. Every ship carried a list of the 847 names. Every crew member memorized them. On Earth, the public response was unlike anything in human history. Millions of people volunteered for military service. Factories worked around the clock producing supplies. Even children did their part, collecting materials and writing letters of support to the troops. But perhaps the most important change was in the hearts of the people. For centuries, humanity had been divided by nations, by religions, by politics. Now, for the first time, they were truly united. They had not just killed 800 people. They had created a wound that bound all of humanity together. 6 months after the attack, Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Unity. Around him, 200 warships floated in perfect formation. Their crews were trained. Their weapons were loaded. Their purpose was clear. A young officer approached him. "Admiral, we have received the latest intelligence report. The Armada is gathered at the edge of human space. They are waiting for us to attack." Nodded slowly. They expect us to come to them. They expect a straightforward battle where their numbers will win. "What are your orders, sir?" Turned to look at the stars through the bridge window. Somewhere out there was the frozen moon where 847 people had died. Somewhere out there was a species that thought humanity was weak. "We will not give them the battle they expect," he said quietly. "We will give them the battle they deserve. Order all ships to begin silent running. We are going to prime." The officer's eyes widened. "Sir, that is there. It is deep in their territory. The journey alone will take months." "Then we had better get started." His face was expressionless. "They wanted to teach humanity a lesson. We are going to teach them one instead. When we are finished, no species in this galaxy will ever think about attacking human civilians again." The 200 ships turned their noses toward enemy space and began to move. They made no announcements. They sent no warnings. They simply disappeared into the darkness between the stars. The Dominion had no idea what was coming. 3 months had passed since the human fleet disappeared. The Dominion waited at the border of human space, ready for the attack that never came. Their massive warships sat in perfect formation, weapons charged, crews eager for battle. But the humans never showed up. Fleet Commander paced the bridge of his flagship, growing more frustrated with each passing day. His 4 arms were folded behind his back, and his gray face was twisted with confusion. "Where are they?" he demanded. "They should have attacked by now. Every species we have conquered has tried to fight back immediately. It is in their nature. Why are the humans different?" His second-in-command tried to calm him. "Perhaps they are afraid, Commander. Perhaps they have realized they cannot defeat us and have chosen to hide." Considered this possibility, it made sense. The humans were weak creatures, soft skin, only 2 arms, short lives. How could they possibly threaten the— "You may be right," said slowly. "Perhaps they are simply cowards. Their brave words were nothing but empty noise." Word spread quickly through the fleet. The humans had run away. The humans were too scared to fight. Soon, the mighty warriors of the Dominion began to mock their enemy. They called the humans paper predators, creatures that looked dangerous but had no real strength. They made jokes about how easily Station Horizon had burned. What they did not know was that the human fleet was already behind them. Captain Han stood on the bridge of the destroyer Remembrance. She was 34 years old, with sharp eyes and steady hands. She had been born on a colony ship in the space between stars. Her grandmother had been a miner on a distant world. Her mother had been a pilot. Fighting for humanity was in her blood. The Remembrance was one of 200 ships in what the military called the Ghost Fleet. For 3 months, they had been traveling through space without using their main engines. They drifted through asteroid fields. They hid in the shadows of gas giants. They moved so slowly and carefully that sensors never detected them. It was the most difficult journey any human crew had ever made. The ships ran on minimum power. The crews lived in near darkness, eating cold food and sleeping in shifts. They could not send messages to each other or to Earth. Any signal might give away their position. But they kept going. They kept going because they remembered 847 names. Lieutenant sat at his console, monitoring the ship's stealth systems. He was a young man, just 26, with nervous energy and a brilliant mind for technology. He had designed half of the stealth systems himself. "Captain," he said quietly, "we are approaching the final waypoint. Prime is just 3 days away." Nodded, she looked around the darkened bridge at her crew. They were tired. They were hungry. They had been living like ghosts for 3 months, but their eyes were still sharp and their hearts were still strong. "How are the other ships?" she asked. Checked his readings. "All 200 ships are in position. No casualties, no detection. We are exactly where we need to be." Allowed herself a small smile. The thought humans were weak. They thought humans were cowards. They had no idea that 200 warships had slipped past their entire defense network and were now sitting within striking distance of there. The next 3 days passed slowly. The Ghost Fleet crept closer and closer to Prime. Through their telescopes, the human crews could see the planet for the first time. It was a large world, covered in gray clouds and dark oceans. Massive cities spread across its surface like metal spiderwebs. Orbital stations circled above, filled with millions of going about their daily lives. On the final night before the attack, Captain called her crew together in the ship's small meeting room. They sat in rows, their faces lit by the dim emergency lights. Many of them had not slept properly in weeks. "Tomorrow," said, "we begin our mission. I want to remind you why we are here." She pressed a button, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed images of Station Horizon, the clean white corridors, the research labs, the small school where children had learned about the stars. 847 people lived here, continued. They were not warriors. They were not threats. They were our brothers and sisters who wanted to explore the universe. They killed them because they thought we would do nothing. She paused and looked at each of her crew members. "Tomorrow we prove them wrong, but I want to be clear about something. We are not here for revenge. We are not here to become monsters like them. Our targets are military only, shipyards, weapons platforms, command centers. We will not attack their cities. We will not harm their civilians. We will show them that humans can be powerful without being cruel." A young ensign raised her hand. "Captain, what if they surrender?" Thought about this question carefully. "Then we accept their surrender. We are not murderers. We are soldiers. There is a difference." The crew nodded in understanding. They had all memorized the list of names. They all wanted justice, but they also wanted to remain human while getting it. At midnight, the Ghost Fleet received the signal from Admiral. It was a simple message, sent in a burst so quick that sensors could not catch it. "For the 847, begin." 200 human warships powered up their engines for the first time in 3 months. Their weapons came online. Their shields activated. They emerged from the darkness like sharks rising from the deep ocean. The battle for Prime was about to begin. The first warning came at exactly midnight, Standard Time. A young sensor operator on an orbital defense station noticed something strange on his screen. 200 objects had appeared from nowhere, moving toward the planet at incredible speed. "Commander," he shouted, "unknown contacts, they came out of nowhere." By the time his commander reached the screen, the first human missiles had already been launched. The Ghost Fleet hit the defenses like a hammer. Human, simple weapons that fired metal slugs at tremendous speed punched through orbital stations before their shields could activate. Stealth bombers dropped their payloads on military shipyards, turning billion-credit facilities into burning wreckage. Electronic warfare systems, perfected during humanity's long history of fighting itself, turned communications into static and noise. On the bridge of the Remembrance, Captain Han watched the battle unfold on her tactical display. Red dots representing enemy installations were blinking out one by one. They were scrambling to respond, but they were too slow, too confused. "They never expected this," Lieutenant said, amazement in his voice. "They never thought anyone would dare attack there." "That is exactly why we are here," replied calmly. "Target the main shipyard complex. Fire when ready." The Remembrance's main guns roared. Across the void, the largest military shipyard in the Dominion exploded in a ball of fire and light. Dozens of warships that had been under construction were destroyed in an instant. On the surface of Prime, Supreme Overlord stood in his palace and watched his empire's military power crumble. He was old even by standards, with wrinkled gray skin and tired eyes. He had ruled the Dominion for 50 years. He had conquered 12 worlds. He had never known defeat. Until now. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "How did they get past our defenses? How did they know where to strike?" His military advisors had no answers. The human attack was too precise, too coordinated. Every missile hit an important target. Every bomb destroyed something valuable. It was as if the humans knew exactly where to hurt them the most. "They have been planning this for months," one advisor finally admitted. "They did not attack our border fleet because they never intended to. They wanted us to wait while they moved around us." His hands trembled with rage and fear. "Contact their commander now." The transmission request was accepted immediately. Admiral's face appeared on the screen. He looked calm, almost peaceful, as if he was discussing the weather rather than the destruction of an empire. Supreme Overlord said, "I am glad you decided to talk." "You will pay for this," shouted. "The Dominion has 3,000 warships. We will hunt down every human in the galaxy. We will burn you to ash." Did not react to the threats. He simply waited until finished screaming, then spoke again. "Your 3,000 warships are scattered across 200 star systems. By the time they arrive here, we will be gone. But before we leave, I want you to understand something." He pressed a button and the view behind him changed. It showed a tactical map of space. Red symbols marked human attacks, not just at Prime, but at dozens of locations across the Dominion. At this moment, human forces are striking every major military installation in your empire. Shipyards, weapons factories, training facilities. We have not touched your colonies. We have not harmed your civilians. We have only destroyed your ability to make war. Stared at the map in horror. His entire military infrastructure was under attack simultaneously. This was not a raid. This was not a battle. This was systematic destruction on a scale he had never imagined possible. "Why?" he whispered. "Why are you doing this?" His expression finally changed. For just a moment, something cold and hard appeared in his eyes. 847 people, he said. Scientists, miners, families, children. You killed them because you thought we were weak. You killed them to send a message. He leaned closer to the camera. Message received. Here is our reply. The transmission showed live footage of military bases exploding across the sector. Shipyards that had taken decades to build were reduced to rubble in minutes. Weapons platforms that had threatened dozens of worlds went dark forever. "We could destroy your cities," continued. "We could kill your civilians. We could do to you exactly what you did to Station Horizon, but we will not, because that is not who we are. We are not monsters. We do not murder innocents." He straightened up. "But we do remember, and we do respond. The next time any species in this galaxy thinks about attacking human civilians, they will remember what happened here. They will remember that humanity does not start wars, but we finish them." On the bridge of the remembrance, Captain watched the conversation with mixed feelings. Part of her wanted to suffer more. Part of her wanted justice for the 847 names she had memorized. But another part of her, the part that made her human, was glad they were not becoming the thing they fought against. "Captain reported, all primary targets have been destroyed. The military in this system has been neutralized. We have lost 7 ships. Enemy losses are extensive." Nodded slowly. 7 ships, perhaps 200 human lives. It was a price, but it was a price they had agreed to pay. "Signal all ships," she ordered. "Begin withdrawal. Our work here is done." The Ghost Fleet turned away from the burning remains of Prime's military might. They had come to deliver a message. The message had been received. Behind them, Supreme Overlord stood in the ruins of his empire's power and finally understood the truth. The humans were not weak. They had never been weak. They had simply chosen not to fight. Until someone gave them a reason. The war lasted 14 months. It was not a war of great battles or heroic charges. It was a war of shadows and patience, of precise strikes and careful retreats. The humans never faced the main fleet directly. They did not need to. Instead, they attacked the things that made war possible: the factories, the shipyards, the supply lines, the communication networks. By the end, the Dominion had lost 60% of its military ships. 80% of its shipyard capacity was in ruins. Every weapons factory in their empire had been destroyed or captured. The mighty force that had conquered 17 civilizations could no longer threaten anyone. But the humans did not destroy the people. Admiral had been clear about this from the very beginning of the war. "We are not them," he told his commanders during a strategy meeting. "Genocide is their way, not ours. We will break their ability to hurt others. We will leave their civilians in peace, and we will make sure they understand why this happened." Some argued against this approach. They wanted revenge. They wanted to suffer the way Station Horizon had suffered, but refused to change course. "If we become monsters to defeat monsters, we lose something more important than any battle. We lose ourselves." The Treaty of was signed on the first anniversary of the Station Horizon massacre. The location was chosen carefully, a new station built on the same frozen moon where 847 people had died. Human engineers had constructed a meeting hall from the wreckage of the original station, using metal that still carried scorch marks from weapons. The delegation arrived in a single, unarmed transport. They were led by a new Supreme Overlord. The old one had been removed by his own people after the disasters of the war. The new leader was younger, quieter, and seemed genuinely broken by what his species had done. The human delegation was led by Admiral himself. He looked older than he had at the start of the war. His hair had turned completely white and deep lines marked his face. The weight of command had cost him greatly, but his eyes were still sharp and his voice was still strong. "The terms are simple," said, laying a document on the table between them. "Permanent demilitarization of space. You may keep enough ships to defend against pirates and natural disasters, but nothing more. Full reparations to the families of Horizon's victims, and the construction of a permanent memorial on this site." The leader read the terms carefully. His 4 hands trembled slightly as he held the document. "You could have asked for much more," he said quietly. "You could have demanded our worlds, our resources, our surrender as a species. Shook his head. We do not want your worlds. We do not want your resources. We want you to remember. We want every child for the next 1,000 years to learn about this war. We want them to know that attacking innocent people has consequences. The treaty was signed without further discussion. Among the observers in the room was a young woman named Park. She was 23 years old, with her grandmother's sharp eyes and steady hands. She had been 7 years old when she watched the broadcast from Station Horizon. She had seen her grandmother read those 847 names. She had watched the explosions tear through the station where her grandmother died. For 16 years, she had carried that memory like a stone in her heart. After the signing ceremony, walked outside to the memorial site. It was simple but powerful, a black stone pillar reaching toward the stars, with 847 names carved into its surface. At the base was a single inscription. We did not come here for war. We came to build, to learn, to grow, and we will never stop. The words were taken from her grandmother's final broadcast. Admiral Han stood beside her. She was no longer a captain. The war had earned her many promotions, but she still wore the same expression she had worn on the Bridge of the Remembrance, calm, determined, and just a little bit sad. I memorized all of their names, said softly. Every crew member on every ship in the Ghost Fleet did. We wanted to carry them with us. Touched her grandmother's name on the memorial. The stone was cold under her fingers. Was it worth it, she asked. All the fighting, all the death, did it change anything? Considered the question for a long moment. Above them, human ships patrolled the sky, guardians of a peace that had been purchased with blood and fire. Your grandmother broadcast those names so that we would not forget them, finally answered. She knew she could not survive. She knew she could not fight back, but she could make sure that her death meant something. She could make sure that the galaxy would remember what happened here. She looked up at the stars. The thought they could kill 800 people and face no consequences. They thought humans were weak and would simply accept their fate. Your grandmother proved them wrong. And because of her, because of what she did, no one will ever make that mistake again. Wiped a tear from her cheek. She would have hated the war. She was a scientist. She believed in building things, not destroying them. I know, agreed. And that is why we did not destroy we could have. We had the power to wipe them out completely. But your grandmother did not broadcast those names so we could become killers. She broadcast them so we could become something better. They stood together in silence, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, millions were rebuilding their society under the watchful eyes of human peacekeepers. Somewhere out there, 17 civilizations that had been crushed by the Dominion were beginning to rise again. And somewhere out there, other species were learning a new truth about the galaxy. Humans were not conquerors. They were not destroyers. They were builders and dreamers who wanted nothing more than to explore the universe in peace. But if you hurt them, if you attacked their families and murdered their children, they would find you. They would break you, and they would make sure you never forgot why. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity had taught it well. On the memorial, 847 names glittered in the starlight. They had not died in vain. They would never be forgotten. And somewhere Park smiled. Her people had come so far. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. They had fought without losing their souls. They had proven that strength and compassion could exist together. That was her legacy. That was humanity's legacy. And it would last forever.